Hey guys, tonight we wander through the soggiest corners of ancient Rome. Not the marble columns or the sun-drenched forums, but the part where the rain soaks into your sandals, your robe clings to your knees, and your umbrella is already halfway broken. You're in Sabura, the working-class neighborhood tucked beneath the hills, where winding alleys twist like cracked pottery and rainwater slides down clay roof tiles in narrow, hissing streams. It's midwinter, the skies are iron, and you, for some reason, decided not to stay indoors. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and feel free to comment where you're watching from tonight and what time the rain might arrive in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You hunch slightly under the weight of your umbrella, a term that sounds deceptively cheerful, but has, in fact, betrayed you. What began as a proud canopy stitched from dyed linen and delicate wooden ribs has now turned into a limp, skeletal nuisance. The left rib snapped in yesterday's gust. The silk fringe sags like wet seaweed, and the handle, bent, possibly cursed. You drag it behind you, half open, half ashamed, like an umbrella trying to retire mid-service. It wasn't even made for rain. That's the joke. Roman umbellae were originally parasols, sunshades, more fashion than function, worn by noble women, carried by slaves, flaunted in gardens and colonnades. They were symbols of elegance, not storm defense. So when you, a humble resident of a leaky tenement with moldy sandals and a satchel full of stale bread, try to wield one against Rome's gloomy drizzle, the gods laugh gently, and the umbrella folds inward like a dead spider. Rain trickles down your neck. You blink water from your eyelashes. Historians still argue whether commoners used umbrellas or if that was strictly an elite indulgence. But in Subura, practicality often won. Someone tried to waterproof linen. Someone tried to tie goat bladders to spokes. Someone else gave up and just wore a basket on their head. That someone, today, is walking beside you, looking smug. You pass a candle stall, the flames sputtering in the wind. The umbrella drags through a puddle and soaks up more water, now heavier than your breakfast. A child runs past, barefoot and cackling, holding half a fig and a stick that might have once been a sword or a spoon. Your broken umbrella catches on a crate. You yank it free. The remaining ribs creak. The cloth flutters briefly, almost beautifully, then collapses again with a sigh. You consider leaving it in the alley, but you don't. Not because you'll fix it. Who are we kidding? But because letting go of it feels oddly like giving up on something larger, like dignity or dry shoulders. So you carry on, past cracked doorways and damp laundry lines. The umbrella held high, even though it's doing nothing. In a narrow passage near the tanner's shop, someone's nailed 3 broken umbrellas to a wall. For art? Protest? Shade? It's unclear. One is missing half its cloth. Another has been patched with what looks like an old toga sleeve. The third still holds shape, but smells deeply of mildew and secrets. You nod, respectfully. You cross a shallow gutter by stepping on a loose brick. It tilts. Your heel slips. You almost lose the umbrella. But somehow, it stays. Not helpful, not supportive, but loyal in its way. You reach a corner where a fig seller huddles beneath a threadbare awning. She eyes your dripping burden and snorts. Rain's too smart for those, she mutters. You offer a weak smile. The umbrella drips onto your tunic. A rivulet slides down your spine like a cold snake. You stand in the rain and watch the street for a moment. The water making every cobblestone look twice as slick and twice as deep. You think about the umbrella's former life, proud perhaps, embroidered, twirling in a garden while someone quoted poetry. Now it's just your companion in gloom. And as you take another step, the wind picks up again, lifting the broken cloth like a ghost rising halfway from its shroud. The umbrella flips. You sigh and keep walking. Because tonight, like the Romans who lived this damp, confusing, bone-soggy life before you, you know one simple truth. Even the broken things still deserve to be carried. You stop beneath a sagging archway, one of those ancient Roman architectural leftovers that's mostly brick, partly moss, and very good at leaking. The broken umbrella rests against your shoulder like it's thinking about retirement. You lean against the wall, letting the drizzle whisper down around you. It's here, under the half-shelter of crumbling stone and persistent damp, that you begin to wonder, where did this cursed contraption come from? The umbella, or umbraculum if you're feeling fancy, wasn't always such a gloomy object. Once, it was a thing of beauty. Bright-colored silks, painted panels, bronze-framed tips that glinted in the sunlight, an accessory of luxury, a portable shadow machine. You picture a Roman matron on a warm day in the gardens of Sallust, a slave walking one step behind her, holding the parasol aloft with practiced precision. She's fanning herself, commenting on someone's sandals, and the umbrella sways above her like a tame flower with 16 perfect petals. It was never meant for people like you. Scruffy tunic, uneven sandals, and a piece of barley bread wrapped in cloth. But Rome has a way of passing its luxuries down through the cracks. You found yours in a stall that sold damaged goods for half price. Or maybe someone abandoned it after the last storm. Either way, now it's yours. Frayed, collapsing, but yours. Historians still argue whether the Romans actually used umbrellas for rain. There are paintings that suggest yes, but written records focus mostly on sun protection, especially for women and the upper class. Rain, in Roman accounts, was something to run through, grumble about, or blame on the gods, not something you calmly blocked with fabric stretched on twigs. You reach into your satchel and pull out the cloth case the umbrella once came in. It's damp, half dissolved at the edges, and smells vaguely of vinegar and wool. Still, you tuck it back in. Sentimental, maybe, or maybe just stubborn. Your eyes wander across the street, where another umbrella, no, just the frame, has been propped against a crumbling statue. The ribs are bare, like skeletal fingers, reaching upward. A pigeon sits on the handle, looking completely unimpressed. That frame tells a story too. Once, it might have been stitched with imported silk, maybe green, maybe gold, maybe painted with tiny laurel wreaths. Now it stands naked in the rain, forgotten by its owner, too bent to repair, too proud to fall over. You step back into the road, umbrella once more overhead, barely, and begin walking again. You pass a cellar of dyed cloth. Bright bolts hang from a line strung between two columns, dripping onto the muddy street. One bolt of fabric flutters as you pass. It's a familiar color, pale blue, like the lining of your umbrella before it tore. You wonder if the cloth came from the same dye batch. You wonder if it matters. You reach a small shrine, one of those roadside altars wedged into a wall, just big enough for a worn statue of Mercury and a cracked offering bowl. Someone has placed a handful of wilted violets there, along with 3 coins and, strangely, half of an umbrella handle. You tilt your head. The wood is split but polished. The knob still smooth from years of handling. You can't tell if it's an offering or a warning. You step around it carefully. As you move through the gloom, you pass a child dragging an umbrella frame along the ground by a string. It rattles as it goes, the metal tips skipping across stone. The child doesn't speak, just stares at you, as if to say, "See, you too carry the bones." You nod. You do. A little further on, you pass a man trying to sell restored umbrellas. He's set up under a canvas awning, so low it brushes the top of your head. His wares hang like sad bats, some with mismatched ribs, others with patchwork panels stitched from old tunics. He gestures toward your broken one. Trade you for something only mostly broken. You decline politely. He shrugs and sits back down, chewing on something and counting the raindrops hitting his knee. Your umbrella creaks again. It has not, technically, kept you dry, but somehow you feel worse thinking about losing it. Because in this rain, in this crumbling, slick, whispering city, something about carrying it, bent and useless and flapping in the wind, makes you feel just a little more human. Even if the pigeons laugh, even if the gods forget, even if the umbrella itself is plotting to fall apart in your hands, you keep walking, because Rome, like umbrellas, is never perfect, and because broken things still offer shade, if only for a moment. You trudge toward the market's edge, where the air smells like boiled turnips and last week's fish, and the streets narrow until they feel more like corridors carved out of wet stone. The rain has eased into that maddening mist stage, no longer dramatic enough to notice, but somehow wetter than ever. The umbrella, faithful in its failure, now flaps gently in the breeze, like a sad bird trying to remember flight. The fabric, once pale blue, is fraying at the edges. A few threads dangle. One rib pokes through the side, like a bone that's tired of staying hidden. You pause beneath a weather-stained arch and examine the thing more closely. Roman umbrellas were not built for resilience. A typical umbrella was made from thin wooden or bronze ribs, bound with linen or silk and coated, sometimes with wax or oil to keep off moisture. But the ribs snapped easily, especially in wind, and the cloth wore through after just a few seasons. You finger the broken rib. It bends, reluctant, as though offended by your inspection. What happens, you wonder, when an umbrella breaks too far to use? Some people toss them into the street, leaving the ribs to clatter against stone until someone trips. Others try to repair them. Though fish glue rarely holds in wet weather, and twine only makes them look like a bird's nest on a stick. And then there are the quiet collectors, those who take the fragments home, not to fix, but to do something else. You've heard stories. A woman in Trans-Tiberum who lined her windows with broken umbrella cloth, blocking out both sun and sound. A retired baker who collected snapped ribs to use as fire starters, swearing they burned hotter than pine. A bathhouse attendant who stitched 6 umbrellas together into one massive shade that fluttered ominously above the steam rooms. You pass an alley where someone's hung a full umbrella skeleton on the wall, each rib stretched outward like a spider. It casts a strange shadow, like a sunburst, but sharper. You're not sure whether it's art, threat, or just someone with too much time and string. Historians still argue whether broken umbellae were casually discarded or ceremonially retired. There are no clear records of repair shops, but excavations near the Subura have uncovered dozens of rib fragments, hinges, and tattered fabric bundles in drain channels and middens. Some were carefully tied, some were burned, some were buried. You remember seeing a cloth scrap pressed into the mud near the Tiber last month. Faint traces of green dye and what looked like a stitch pattern shaped like a fish. You didn't touch it. You just watched it slowly vanish beneath the water, folding in on itself like it had somewhere else to be. The umbrella in your hand droops again. You adjust it, trying to coax the frame upright. It wobbles, then settles at a slant, as if in protest. It reminds you of those painted funerary panels you once saw at the museum, the ones with dignified portraits and strange too-stiff posture. The people in those paintings held umbellae too, usually closed, usually perfect. You can't help but wonder what they'd say about yours. You reach the corner of a quiet square, half flooded, cobblestones reflecting the sky like a broken mirror. In the center stands a statue, Mercury, maybe, or a very bored Apollo, and at his feet someone has left offerings, a crust of bread, a clay pendant, and a broken umbrella handle, stripped of fabric and cracked down the middle. The gods accept all kinds. You sit for a moment on the edge of the square, watching the mist settle. Around you, Rome continues in its usual sleepy chaos. A donkey refuses to move. A vendor argues with a customer about the price of soggy chestnuts. A cat whines between your ankles, sniffs your umbrella, and moves on. You wonder how many of these people are carrying their own version of your burden, a thing that doesn't work, doesn't help, but somehow insists on being carried. The mist thickens. You tilt the umbrella against your shoulder. The rib taps your cheek, gently, like a reminder. You don't drop it. Not yet, because somewhere in this city, someone might need a spare rib for a wind chime, or a lamp cover, or a story. And broken things, after all, still hold shape in the right hands. You keep moving, your sandals sloshing through puddles, the rain no longer falling from above so much as seeping upward from every stone. The umbrella's bent ribs creak slightly with each gust of wind, like they're mumbling complaints in Latin. You don't answer, you just walk. The thing about a snapped umbrella rib, besides its general uselessness, is the peculiar way it changes your posture. You have to tilt the frame just so to keep the torn fabric from smacking you in the face. Your wrist aches from the constant adjustment, and everyone you pass gives you the same tired look, the look of someone who knows exactly how it feels to be betrayed by a tool that once promised shade and elegance. There's a subtle shame in it, a shame that doesn't belong to you, but still clings to your shoulders. You round a corner and pause beneath the eave of a tavern, where several other Romans are huddled, each holding their own slightly compromised umbrellas. One man's is only 3 ribs left, and he's tied them together with what looks like rawhide. Another woman's shade flutters with patches stitched from old tunics, blue, red, and one square that might have once been underwear. You join them in silence. No one says a word, but the atmosphere is thick with unspoken understanding, the defeated pride of trying to preserve an object past its prime, the quiet agreement that throwing it away feels like giving in, and perhaps something darker. A child approaches, mud-streaked, eyes bright, with a handful of broken umbrella tips on a leather string. She's trying to trade them for figs. One man laughs. Another actually considers it. You remember hearing about these little exchanges? How broken ribs were once carved into hairpins, or used to scratch prayers into wall plaster, or hidden under thresholds to ward off bad luck. Though some said they did the opposite. Historians still argue whether broken umbrella parts had symbolic meaning, or whether people just hated wasting wood. There are whispers of ribs used in love spells, bent handles buried beneath doorways, or umbrella cloths dyed black and burned at funeral altars. No one agrees on the facts, but the stories remain. The child tugs at your sleeve. She gestures toward your umbrella. You shake your head gently. Not yet. She shrugs and skips off into the mist. The tavern crowd shifts. A man accidentally bumps your frame with his own. The spokes tangle briefly, then pull apart with a soft click, like the umbrellas are sighing in greeting. You step back into the street, the rain picking up once again, as if tired of waiting for its cue. Your robe clings to your knees. The handle of the umbrella slips slightly in your grip, slick with damp. You pass a tiny archway, barely wider than your shoulders, and duck through. The passageway is lined with old carvings, scratched graffiti, and the faint outlines of merchant symbols. One drawing catches your eye, a faded sketch of a man holding what is clearly an umbrella. It's upside down. You wonder if that was a mistake or a joke. You smile either way. You exit the alley and find yourself beside a small drainage canal. Floating in the shallow water is an umbrella frame stripped clean, ribs splayed outward like the skeleton of a forgotten bird. It spins lazily in the current, caught on a tuft of grass. You reach out and gently nudge it with the tip of your sandal. It bobs once, then continues downstream. You watch it go, and for a moment you think about letting yours go too, just dropping it here in the gray wash of the street, letting it float, letting the city decide what becomes of it. Maybe it would drift toward the Tiber. Maybe a scavenger would find it, pluck the ribs, make a flute, or a trap, or a set of prayer sticks. But you don't let go, because the umbrella is part of you now, part of your story, part of this long, wet, broken walk through a city that carries its ghosts in clay jars and its shade in scraps. You shift your grip, Lift the frame a little higher and keep walking, not proud, not dry, but still carrying the bones. You don't intend to stop at Gaius's repair stall. It sort of happens on its own. One moment, you're navigating puddles and slippery paving stones. The next, you're standing beneath a piece of stretched canvas, facing a table covered in bent ribs, fabric scraps, and a small pot of something that smells like glue and wine and failure. Gaius looks up from behind a curtain of hanging cords. His hair is the color of soot and rainwater. His tunic is patched with strips of old umbella cloth, none of them matching. He grunts a greeting and eyes your frame. Ah, one of those. You tilt the umbrella toward him like you're offering a peace treaty. The fabric drips. The ribs sag. One end twitches like it wants to leave this world entirely. He lifts it gently, turning it in his hands with the reverence of a priest inspecting a broken relic. His fingers are stained with dye. His thumbnails are flat and ridged like bone spatulas. 2 ribs gone, he mutters. 1 cracked, handles warped, stitching sad. Glue might help, or a spell. You raise an eyebrow. He doesn't laugh. In the dim light of his awning, the pile of parts behind him takes on the shape of a shrine. Bent spokes, twisted handles, silk torn into ribbons, lace trims browned with age. Every piece, once part of something dignified, now each one catalogued with an almost obsessive neatness. You remember hearing stories about him. Gaius the Umbrella Fixer, or Gaius, the Collector of Ruins, depending on who you ask. Some say he used to make parasols for senators' wives. Others claim he once built a collapsible sunshade, so large it covered a bakery courtyard for an entire summer. He won't confirm either. He motions for you to sit. The stool is crooked. The air smells of oil, wet wool, and something faintly fishy, likely the glue made from boiled skins and whatever washed up from the Tiber last week. Gaius starts his work. First, he removes the cracked rib, muttering to it softly as he snaps it free. Then, he pulls out a thin bronze replacement from a hanging rack. It doesn't match, of course, but then again, nothing here does. He dips a brush into the glue. It oozes slowly, sticking to the bristles like molasses made of secrets. Historians still debate whether there were actual umbrella repair shops in ancient Rome. No surviving texts mention them by name, but scattered accounts suggest itinerant tinkers might have offered repairs along with blade sharpening, sandal patching, and the occasional impromptu exorcism. Gaius fits the mold, though he's probably more glue than man by now. He pulls out thread dyed with soot and begins stitching the torn panel. His needle is curved. His fingers move, like he's done this 1,000 times, even though every umbrella is slightly different, each with its own betrayals, its own grudges. You sit quietly, watching the mist bead on the awning above. At the edge of the stall, a cage holds 3 crows. They eye you with clear disapproval. Scarecrows, Gaius explains, without looking up. Clients pay me in birds sometimes. I don't ask. One of the crows caws softly. Gaius drops a crumb into the cage. The bird snaps it up, then returns to glaring at you. You glance down at your own umbrella. It's already starting to look less pathetic, less haunted. The new rib gleams faintly in the gloom. The stitched fabric is uneven but strong. Honest, Gaius leans back and examines his work. It won't win any beauty contests, he says, but it'll last another few reigns. You nod. That's all you need. He holds out his hand. You dig in your satchel for payment. 2 small coins and a strip of dried fig. He accepts both with equal gravity. Before you leave, he presses something into your palm. A spare rib. Just in case, he murmurs. They always go in 3s. You don't ask why. You just thank him and step back into the rain. The umbrella opens more smoothly now. The fabric is taut again. The ribs aligned. Mostly. It leans to one side like a tired actor, but holds its shape, holds its purpose. You walk on. Behind you, the crow caws once more, and somewhere in your satchel, the spare rib shifts slightly. Waiting, the newly mended umbrella creaks just once as you open it fully for the first time in what feels like days. It doesn't flap anymore. It doesn't droop like a dying flower. It's not elegant, but it's functional. And in Rome, that's more than most things. You walk beyond the markets now, into the scattered vineyards outside the city walls. The rain has softened into a persistent drizzle, falling in lazy streaks across rows of sleeping grapevines. It smells like wet soil, crushed leaves, and the lingering memory of last year's wine. You're not here for grapes. You're here for the scarecrows, not the usual ones. The straw-stuffed sentinels with hollow eyes and outstretched arms. No, these are stranger, harsher, strung with broken umbrellas, their fabric flapping in the wind like ceremonial flags or discarded wings. You stop beside one. The pole is crooked, jammed into a mound of churned-up mud and stones. From its top, 3 umbrella frames dangle by twine, spinning gently in the breeze. Their ribs catch the light, gleaming like bones. Bits of cloth cling to them, blue, yellow, one in stripes that might have once matched a senator's toga. They twist, they creak, they whisper. You've heard that vineyard keepers started doing this after noticing birds were frightened, not by the shape, but by the sound. Something about the metallic scraping of the umbrella ribs in the wind spooked crows more effectively than any straw dummy. You step closer. One of the umbrellas is missing every panel, but one. It flaps weakly, like a ghost signaling across a battlefield. Another has been painted with crude eyes. One open, one forever closed. The third has been tied with red string at each joint. No one seems to know why. Historians still argue whether these broken umbrella scarecrows were purely practical or had some ritual significance. There are no formal records, but rural inscriptions mention wind watchers and bone flags used to guard harvests. The terms don't show up anywhere else. Scholars disagree. Farmers just keep tying up umbrellas. You reach out and tap one of the frames. It spins twice, then slows. The breeze shifts. A faint metallic song trickles through the air. Part clang, part whimper. You look down the row of vines and see another scarecrow. Then another. Dozens, each wearing a shattered umbrella like a tattered crown. A whole procession of broken shade marching in stillness to the rhythm of the rain. Further down, you find one where someone has arranged the ribs to resemble antlers. Another is bound in purple silk now faded and streaked with mildew. One even has bells tied to the tips of each rib. They don't chime, they just hang. You wonder how many of these umbrellas once shaded picnics, escorted noblewomen, or paraded through festivals. Now they spin in silence, keeping birds and maybe something else away from the fruit. You walk between the rows, the mud sucking gently at your sandals. Your own umbrella holds steady overhead, no longer ashamed of itself. The cloth still sags slightly on the patched side, but it covers you. It tries. That's enough. You pass a pile of broken frames near a tool shed. Some have been sorted, others left in a heap. A boy sits beside them, tying twine around a rib. He glances up at you, then returns to his work. He doesn't speak, but you see that his pile of tools includes a knife, a sack of nails, and a tin of blue dye. New scarecrows, you ask softly. He nods. You leave him to his art. As you step back onto the main path, you look over your shoulder one more time. The vineyard sways, the umbrella bones creak. The fields, for now, are safe. And you walk on, sheltered beneath your own slightly steadier ruin, accompanied by the knowledge that even the sky itself cannot fully undo what's already been repurposed. Not all tools must stay useful. Some simply need to be seen again, differently. You leave the vineyard behind, its skeletal umbrellas creaking in the distance like a rusted chorus, and return to the quieter veins of the city, those back alleys where the cobblestones sweat, the walls lean inward, and the shadows press just a little too close. It's nearing evening now. The sky is bruised gray, the kind of Roman twilight that makes the oil lamps flicker before they're even lit. You follow the scent of wet cloth and old wax, and before long, you find yourself at the edge of the cloth market, not the Grand Forum, stalls. This is a market that doesn't appear on official maps. It only opens when the rain threatens to stay. The fabrics are second-hand, third-hand sometimes, and none of them exactly legal, but they whisper. You duck beneath a canopy stitched from mismatched linens, some from old togas, others from temple banners, and more than a few that, if you look closely, bear the patterns of broken umbrellas. You're not the only one here. A handful of quiet figures browse the rolls of fabric, their fingertips trailing along the frayed edges, as if feeling for memories. No one haggles. The prices are not spoken aloud. The merchants, if that's what they are, don't speak much at all. You find one bolt that catches your eye. Sea green, water-stained, soft to the touch. It smells faintly of olive oil and something older. The merchant sees you looking and raises an eyebrow. From an umbella, left at the theater of Pompey after the eclipse. You blink. You hadn't asked. He leans in slightly, still folds at the corners. You nod and move on. Further down the row, a woman is cutting strips from a red canopy, embroidered with what might once have been birds. She's sewing them into long bands, charms maybe, or bindings. You notice she avoids the frayed edge, the one that looks like it was burned. Don't cut there, she mutters, half to herself. It still remembers. Historians rarely mention these markets. Perhaps they never knew about them. Perhaps they didn't want to, but among Rome's forgotten stalls, you hear rumors of fabrics that still shudder when touched, umbrella cloths used as shrouds, stitched into pillows that grant peculiar dreams. There's a merchant with a tray of painted scraps, Sections of old parasols, hand-painted with eyes, wings, even suns. One shows a chariot chasing something that looks like smoke. You ask what it was for. Shade theater, the merchant says, hung above actors during midday tragedies. It caught more than sunlight. You don't buy anything. Not yet. But you keep your hand on your own umbrella, feeling its shape, its quiet weight. You imagine what its fabric might become one day, if you let it go. A pouch, a banner, a winding sheet. You reach the last stall. The woman behind it has no products on display, only a box of scraps and a bowl of dark thread. She looks up and gestures to your umbrella. Still whole? Barely. You answer. She smiles, faintly, then not ready. You nod. You step back, out of the cloth market, and into the street. Behind you, the stalls rustle softly as the wind picks up. The sea green bolt flutters. The red one does not. Rain returns, steady now. You open your umbrella. It holds. You walk, surrounded by shadows that have been sewn, cut, rethreaded. The street is slick, the air full of mist and thread, and voices that never quite rise above a whisper. Even the wind seems to respect this place. You tighten your grip on the handle and keep moving, because here, among the whispering fabrics and stitched warnings, you begin to realize something. In Rome, nothing truly disappears. Not cloth, not ribs, not stories. The rain grows heavier as you weave your way toward the dim orange flicker of the bathhouses. You're not going there to wash, though the idea of hot water and steam does tug at your imagination. No, tonight you're drawn by something stranger, the soft, flickering light that dances through fabric shades above the entrance, where shadows pulse like ghosts behind veils. You step inside the vestibule, where warm air presses against your damp robe, and the scent of oil, charcoal, and wet limestone fills your nose. Your umbrella, still upright, drips gently onto the marble floor. You fold it carefully, tucking the handle beneath your arm. It's still holding together, patched and re-ribbed, but you're learning to respect its stubbornness. In the main hall, lamps line the walls, dozens of them, flickering from behind stretched bits of cloth. And if you look closely, really look, you'll notice the seams, thin, uneven stitching, watermarks, the faint imprint of pleats once meant to fold. They're umbrella remnants, umbrella canopies, now reborn as lamp covers. You walk slowly beneath them, their muted colors stained by time, ochre, faded purple, a gray so pale it looks like breath. The cloth breathes with the firelight. You can't tell whether the shadows are being cast or conjured. A man in the corner polishes lamp bases. He nods toward the ceiling. Old cloth glows better, he says, especially when it's seen the sky. You reach out and touch one, gently. The fabric is warm from the oil lamp within. It feels like skin. One piece near the far wall is different, darker, thicker. It was once the underside of a noblewoman's parasol, you suspect, the kind carried by slaves along the circus, Maximus, to keep her skin from even the briefest sunlight. Now, it filters firelight, casting her forgotten elegance over cracked tiles and half-naked men arguing about olive prices. Historians still debate the afterlives of Roman materials. Some claim bathhouses used only specially made linens, but stray mentions in graffiti and a curious line in a late poet's verse hint otherwise, that lamp covers were sometimes repurposed from discarded luxuries, especially umbrellas, especially the broken ones. The cloth hums faintly in the heat. You step deeper into the baths, walking through clouds of steam, past benches of lounging bodies and whispered conversations. You spot another shade, this one clearly stitched from multiple umbrellas. The ribs are gone, but their memory remains in the seams. The light flickers through uneven panels, creating a flickering map of someone else's former protection. One panel is embroidered, just barely, a gold thread tracing what might have once been family emblem. Now, it just looks like a river with teeth. You sit beside the warm wall and unfold your umbrella slightly, comparing the fabric. Yours is rougher, but not unworthy. Not anymore. A boy runs past you, laughing, trailing a towel behind him like a cape. He bumps a lamp post and the umbrella shade atop it wobbles, threatening to fall. A hand reaches up, one of the bath attendants, and steadies it with the precision of someone who's done it 100 times. Careful, the attendant mutters. It remembers being in the sun. You're not sure if that's a joke. You lean back and watch the steam curl around the lights. The shades breathe gently, rising and falling in the warm drafts. Some look torn, some stitched. One has been dyed with ash. None are new. You sip from a small cup of barley tea, warm and bitter. A man beside you glances at your umbrella, still resting quietly across your lap. You fixing that? Already did, you reply. He nods once, then turns away. The steam curls, the lamps flicker, and above you, the umbrella ghosts sway. Not as protectors, not as tools, but as stories, still glowing long after they lost their shape. You leave the warmth of the bathhouse behind with some reluctance, stepping out into the cool night air. The city has gone quiet, not silent, but muted, like someone draped a woolen blanket across its shoulders. Only the rain persists, steady and stubborn, tapping out its rhythm on tile roofs and puddle-strewn alleys. The umbrella creaks as you open it again. The newly repaired rib holds. A fine mist clings to the fabric, and you swear it's starting to sag more gracefully now, as if it's come to terms with its place in the world. You follow a winding path that leads past the backs of apartment blocks, through courtyards where laundry lines sway like tired ghosts. You pass the occasional flickering lamp and a cat darting into shadows, and then you hear it. Laughter, high-pitched, circling, a little too rhythmic to be casual. Children, you find them gathered beneath the eaves of an old tenement, huddled around something that clatters and spins. They don't notice you at first. You're just another wet shadow among many. You move closer. What they're playing with isn't a toy in the usual sense. It's an umbrella rib, just one, sharpened at the tip and stuck into a small wooden disc like a crude spindle. Around it, they've attached scraps of cloth, dyed bright with crushed berries and charcoal soot, and arranged it to catch the wind. The device spins when one of them blows on it, not quickly, just enough to make the shadows twist. You realize what it is. A rib whirligig. Once, long ago, These might have been harmless toys, but this is Rome. Even the children's games lean toward the uncanny. One girl whispers to the others, "If it spins the wrong way, it means you've been cursed." They all go silent. The youngest boy blows gently on the wheel. It stutters, wobbles, then spins clockwise. Everyone exhales. You watch the rib catch the wind and hum softly. The cloth flutters, and the spindle makes a low clicking noise as it turns. There are 3 other spinners nearby, each a little different. One is taller, with feathers tied to its tips. Another has coins glued to the arms so it jingles as it moves. One is covered in what looks suspiciously like dried blood, though you tell yourself it's berry juice. The children don't seem afraid of the toys. If anything, they treat them with reverence, nudging them just so, avoiding stepping over their spinning paths, whispering to each other about which direction brings luck, which brings the not-so-luck. Historians rarely mention children's games involving broken umbrella parts, though some fragments of literature describe odd rituals in alleyways, sometimes involving the bones of the shade and the wheel of breath. It's unclear whether these were religious practices or just very intense playgrounds. You ask quietly, "Where did you get the ribs?" The oldest girl, maybe 10, with a streak of soot across her nose, shrugs. "They're everywhere. After storms. We find them." She doesn't look at your umbrella, but you instinctively hold it tighter. You crouch beside them and watch the wheels spin. There's something hypnotic about it. The steady rotation, the flutter of wet cloth, the occasional metallic click as the wind shifts. One child starts humming, a soft, repetitive note, barely more than breath. You wonder what adults see when they pass this courtyard. Just children playing, or something else, something older, wiser, slightly off-center. Eventually, the wind dies, and the toys slow to a stop. One boy picks his up, examines the rib carefully, and then taps it twice against the stone wall. The sound rings oddly flat. "That's enough," he says. No one argues. They pack up the spinners, wrapping the ribs in bits of oilcloth, stashing them in baskets and folds of clothing. They disappear into doorways, into upper rooms, into Rome's many quiet hollows, and you're left alone again, in the rain. You step beneath the overhang where the largest whirligig was placed. There, carved into the brick, barely visible in the gloom, is a small spiral etched by a blade. You reach out, run your finger over it. It feels smooth, worn. You open your umbrella again and stand beneath it for a moment, watching the empty courtyard. The rib you carry has probably spun like that before, in a child's game, in a warning, or maybe in a story no one remembers telling. You wander deeper into the city's old arteries, where streets narrow and curve without warning, and the cobblestones shine slick as obsidian under the wet gleam of half-lit oil lamps. Rome at night is a place of thresholds, between sleep and watchfulness, memory and forgetting, shadow and something else. Your umbrella follows you like a quiet companion. Its patched cloth ripples softly with each breath of wind, the ribs creaking once in a while, as if whispering old secrets to the rain. You find yourself standing at a crossroads, not the busy kind, with carts and curses and the smell of boiled cabbage. This one is quieter. 2 narrow streets, meeting at a cracked flagstone where the moss grows in delicate spirals and the air smells of damp ash and fennel seeds. There's a shrine here, not grand, just a nook in a wall, marked with soot and a faint inscription, so faded you can't tell if it says to Mercury or to memory. A statue stands within, small, featureless, worn down until it looks more like suggestion than form. Two tiny bowls rest at its feet. One contains burnt herbs. The other holds a bundle of what appears to be umbrella handles. You move closer. One is snapped in half. Another is twisted, the grip wrapped in red thread. The third lies whole but deeply scorched, its end blackened as if touched by something hot and inhuman. A few copper coins scattered among them. One has been pierced with a nail. You've heard of this. Some Romans believed crossroads were places where the veil thinned, where spirits lingered, where forgotten gods passed through on their way to somewhere darker, and sometimes, when they had nowhere else to speak their fears, people would leave small offerings, broken tools, torn cloth, things that had lost their purpose. Umbrellas, useless in death, once protective, made perfect tokens. You kneel slowly and set your own umbrella against the wall, not to leave it, just to let it rest. A drizzle slicks the stone as you study the scene. Someone's drawn symbols around the bowl in white chalk, circles, arrows, a shape like an open eye. One mark looks like a bent rib, another resembles a hinge. Historians still argue whether these roadside rituals were officially tolerated or quietly ignored. Some texts hint that offerings to Mercury at crossroads were frowned upon, especially when they involved broken or unclean items. Others suggest these spots were kept precisely for the city's odd griefs. Lost items, broken tools, old guilt. A cat darts past behind you. You don't turn. You just breathe. Then, gently, you touch one of the handles. It's smooth, worn by rain. The grip is wrapped in faded blue cloth, now soft as breath. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine the umbrella it once supported, proud, taut, glinting in the summer sun above some anonymous Roman head. Was it lost in a storm, cast aside in anger, left here as a final act of gratitude or apology? You open your eyes again. The shrine is still. The statue stares forward, and the bowl of broken handles rests, undisturbed. You pick up your own umbrella. Again, it doesn't complain. You don't speak. You simply bow your head slightly to the nameless figure, to the street, to the idea of leaving things behind. Then you walk on, not because you're finished, but because some things aren't meant to stay in one place, even when broken. And behind you, the shrine watches with a silence older than words. The rain has settled into a steady rhythm now, no longer dramatic, just determined. You walk with your umbrella tilted against the wind, the fabric fluttering at the edges, but holding. The city around you seems to exhale, as if even the marble and mortar have decided to lean into the damp and stop pretending they were ever dry. You're in the Aventine Quarter now, where the buildings huddle a little closer and the air tastes faintly of moss and stone. You know where you're going, even if you didn't plan to. The alleys here have a way of deciding for you. Your steps slow as you approach a building you've passed before, an old tenement that looks more like a stack of forgotten thoughts than a place anyone still lives. The shutters creak in the wind. The door hangs open just enough to suggest it doesn't remember how to close. You step inside. Not far. Just the threshold. The hallway smells of damp linen and extinguished candles. The floor groans. The walls are papered in mildew and graffiti. Some fresh, some ancient, some somewhere in between. You're not alone. On the landing above, someone moves. Soft steps, not hurried. A girl appears. Maybe 12. Maybe ageless. Her robe is 2 sizes too big. Her eyes are careful. She doesn't speak. You nod. She nods back. Then, slowly, she lifts something from behind her back. An umbrella, or what's left of one. Its ribs are warped, twisted inward like it tried to fold itself into hiding. The cloth is patched unevenly. The color's wrong. It's tied shut with string, tight, like a warning. She holds it out to you. You take a breath. No, thank you, you whisper. She nods again and turns away. You remain on the threshold for a moment longer, unsure whether you were just part of a game, a test, or a ritual no one remembers starting. There are stories about buildings like this, old Roman insulae, with more shadows than residents, places where light flickers for no reason, and staircases that lead to rooms no longer listed on any census. One tale mentions a girl who collects broken umbrellas and traps spirits inside them. Another tells of a man who carried one that always stayed dry, even during a storm, until the day he forgot to close it and it collapsed in on him like a scream. Historians dismiss these as urban folklore, naturally, but sometimes even a historian flinches when the lamp sputters for no reason, or when a rib of metal scratches the stone in a rhythm too deliberate to be chance. You take one step back and leave the building behind. Back outside, the rain feels colder. You grip your umbrella more tightly now, noticing for the first time how the patched fabric makes a faint, crinkling sound, like something turning over in its sleep. The alley around you narrows, the walls pressing in as if trying to remember who you are. You walk faster, past a shrine with no statue, past a door with no handle, and then, quite suddenly, the street opens into a small square. One of those places Rome keeps tucked away like a secret. A fountain dribbles in the center, surrounded by uneven paving stones and 4 empty benches. On the far side, someone has hung umbrella frames from a line between 2 windows. Dozens of them, ribs splayed, cloth removed, handles wrapped in string. They hang like wind chimes. Though they don't chime, they swayed gently in the breeze, casting spiderweb shadows across the stones. You walk beneath them, umbrella open. They don't touch you, but you feel them watching. You don't stay long. You pass through the square, out the far side, and do not look back. Some places in Rome are like that, places where broken things are not forgotten. They're kept, tended, remembered. You hold your umbrella tighter and walk into the night. You descend toward the river now, drawn by the sound rather than the sight of it. A low, restless shush that slides between buildings like smoke. The Tiber is swollen from the rain, its current sluggish but strong. the color of old coins and secrets long given up. Your sandals slide slightly on the slick slope of the embankment. The stones here are uneven, cracked like the skin of something ancient and still breathing beneath. The wind shifts. Your umbrella shudders. You've come here because someone told you, once, quietly, in a bathhouse steam room, that broken umbrellas sometimes end up in the mud along the Tiber. Not thrown, not lost. Placed. You find them near a bend in the riverbank. 5 of them, bundled together with red cord. The ribs are snapped, tangled in each other, like they tried to protect something and failed. The cloth is sodden, wrapped tight around the frames, as if shielding them from prying eyes. One handle is carved with a simple spiral, another bears a faded etching of a winged foot. You crouch beside them, rain spattering your knees. The bundle is weighted with a rock, tied carefully, not a careless discard, a ritual. You don't touch it, you don't need to, because you understand. Now, this isn't trash, it's burial. Historians rarely speak of this sort of thing, though fragments of text mention water offerings and sinking shadows. One surviving letter from a woman to her brother describes throwing a broken parasol into the Tiber after a dream about someone returning from the dead. She called it letting the memory drown. You look closer. The red cord is knotted, not once, but 5 times, in the old way. You remember that from an amulet vendor's stall. 5 knots for finality, 6 to leave, a door open. These knots are tight, a final offering. You look up and down the bank. You're alone, save for a crow, perched on a nearby post, hunched and watching. The rain beads on its feathers. It doesn't blink. You step back from the bundle. Your own umbrella rests by your side, open, unburied. You feel a strange guilt for that, not because you plan to discard it, but because you've seen now what happens to others like it. There is honor here, in being laid down, tied together, given over to the water. You leave the riverside quietly. The sound of the current follows you, and behind you, the red knots glisten. As you climb back toward the street, you pass another small bundle lodged between 2 stones, a single umbrella rib, wrapped in cloth, wedged carefully so it won't float away. Perhaps a leftover, or perhaps someone's promise they'll return to finish what they started. The city seems quieter now. The rain continues, but thinner, the kind that doesn't fall so much as settle. You unfold your umbrella again and walk slowly. It whispers as it opens, its new rib clicking into place. You don't know if it will hold tomorrow, but tonight it does. And as you pass beneath overhangs and under balconies, you can't help but wonder how many more ribs lie buried in the mud, knotted and sleeping, waiting for their stories to sink all the way down. You wake before dawn, not in your bed, but sitting upright in the corner of a quiet courtyard where the stones are still wet and the lamp above you burns low with dying oil. You don't remember falling asleep. You do remember walking, drifting, letting the city fold you into itself, like another piece of worn cloth. Your umbrella rests on your lap, closed now, its damp fabric cold against your knees. You blink, stretch, then hear the sound of footsteps, measured, soft, and limping. You look up. A man passes through the courtyard, moving like someone following a path no one else sees. His robe is dark, patched at the hem, and in one hand he carries a long pole across his shoulder. From it dangle broken umbrellas, 6 of them, maybe more. The ribs sway gently. A few whisper with each step. The cloths trail behind like faded banners in a parade no one came to watch. He doesn't look at you, just walks by, one foot slightly dragging. The silent collector. You've heard of him. Some say he visits after heavy storms, searching the streets for what others have left behind, not to repair, not to sell, just to gather. No one knows where he takes the umbrellas. No one asks. Others say he walks only at night, appearing in courtyards like this, slipping between alleys, finding umbrellas too broken to bother with, and giving them rest. You stand, slowly, and follow at a distance. He walks through the side streets with practiced ease, stepping around puddles like he knows where they'll be before they form. You watch as he pauses beneath a shuttered window. There, leaning against the wall, is a collapsed umbrella, frame twisted, cloth gone, forgotten. He stoops, lifts it, ties it to his pole, continues. You keep following, not too close. He crosses the Velabrum, that shallow valley where vendors sleep and shadows linger a little longer than they should. The mist here clings low, hugging the ground, like breath not yet exhaled. He passes a fountain, stops, reaches into a pouch, and draws out a handful of bones. No, umbrella ribs, stripped clean, bundled with red thread. He places them gently in the water. They sink immediately. You stand frozen. Historians, if they've heard of him, don't mention him. The silent collector lives in footnotes, in rumors traded between oil merchants and lamplighters. Some say he's a former umbrella maker, gone mad after a lightning strike. Others think he's a priest of some long-forgotten god of broken things. You're not sure what he is, but you know now that he is real. He turns a corner. You hurry after. But when you reach the bend, the alley is empty. Just puddles. A cat. The faint scent of burnt cloth. He's gone. You stand there for a while, listening. Somewhere nearby, an umbrella rib creaks gently in the wind. You look down at your own, still intact, still yours. You grip it tighter, not out of fear, but in recognition, because not everything broken wants to be collected. Some things want to be carried, flaws and all. You walk back toward the center of the city, the morning light beginning to smudge the edges of night. Your feet splash quietly through the puddles. The mist thins, and somewhere behind you, perhaps in another courtyard, the silent collector walks again. Dawn creeps into Rome, not with a blaze, but a sigh, the kind of sigh that slips beneath doorways and settles into the creases of old fabric. The sky turns a faint, sullen gray. The rain hasn't stopped. It's just forgotten how to be dramatic. You wander through the early streets, your umbrella open above you, catching droplets that fall like second thoughts. People are beginning to stir now. Merchants pulling carts from doorways, bakers lighting ovens, pigeons shaking themselves dry in slow motion. No one rushes. You pause at a corner near the old census hall. A rusted sign creaks gently overhead. Below it, nailed crookedly to the wooden wall, is a board bearing ancient notices, warnings, proclamations, forgotten laws. One of them flutters loose in the wind. The ink has run, but you can still read most of it. Edict Fatuf on the disposal of sunshades and personal covers rendered unserviceable. You blink. It's a real law. You step closer. The text continues. It's Latin both formal and irritated. Let it be known that all broken shades, parasols, or personal awnings, hereafter known as umbellae, shall be turned into the civic sorting house near the Porta Trigemina. Those found discarding such items into canals, shrines, or crossroads shall be fined, or in repeat cases summoned before the magistrate for reprimand. You snort softly. Even in ancient Rome, bureaucracy found a way to chase umbrellas. At the bottom of the edict is a strange clause. If said item be wholly unribbed, frayed beyond use, or cursed, as attested by 3 or more witnesses, it may be buried in private land under tile. You read that part again. Buried, under tile, cursed. You glance down at your own umbrella. Not cursed, as far as you know. Though, given the company it's kept lately, maybe it just hasn't been tested. Historians sometimes mention Roman disposal laws, particularly for sandals, chamber pots, even broken statues. But umbrellas? Rare. This scrap might be one of the only surviving mentions, and here it is. Half-nailed, half-faded, just fluttering on a wall, like no one ever cared to enforce it. You fold your umbrella slightly and tap the wooden handle against the wall in a kind of quiet salute. Buried under tile, you start to notice how many tiles there are. Not the rooftops, though those too, but broken bits scattered across alleyways, embedded in walls, lining steps, shards in courtyards, etched with names, symbols, even the occasional spiral. You wonder how many of them cover sleeping umbrellas. You find a small square of mosaic tucked beside a public latrine. Just 4 tiles, arranged in a half circle, strangely symmetrical. You crouch and tap them. Hollow, maybe. Or maybe your imagination wants them to be. You don't lift them. Some things are meant to stay buried. You move on, through a passage, where the rain falls straight through a collapsed ceiling. You see a bent umbrella handle, lodged in a crack between stones, wedged there like a marker, or a gravestone. You pass it without touching. Elsewhere, in a garden courtyard, a young man is sweeping tile shards into a neat pile. He nods to you. You nod back. You both hear the faint creak of something above, an old umbrella frame dangling from a beam, twirling slowly. Neither of you comments on it. There are rules for this sort of thing, and most of them aren't written. You open your umbrella again and step into the street. It holds, for now, and maybe, if the wind doesn't twist, if the ribs stay true, if no one curses you beneath their breath, you won't need to bury it. Not today, but you walk more carefully now, eyes on the ground, watching for broken tiles, marked places, silent warnings left in plain sight. And when you pass another edict nailed to another wall, you glance at it, then at your umbrella. You tighten your grip and keep walking. The rain finally lets up as you climb the hill toward the edge of the city. Not all the way, just enough to feel strange without it, like Rome is catching its breath after a long confession. The stones are slick, the gutters still murmuring, but the air has shifted. It smells like damp leaves, rusted metal, and the faint sweetness of crushed violets underfoot. You find a path winding behind a row of shrines, the kind no one really visits anymore. One is dedicated to an unknown deity, just a plaque and a basin filled with rainwater. Another has a small pile of bones at its base, not human, probably at the top of the path, tucked beneath the sagging eaves of an old storage shed. You find it, a place to rest, a wooden bench, dry enough. You sit, your umbrella leans against your leg, closed now. The handle still bears the marks of your grip, the ribs still slightly uneven beneath their stitched cloth. It has made it, in its own way, as far as you have. You stretch your legs. The wind sighs through the cypress trees nearby. Above you, bits of old fabric flutter from a length of twine stretched across the rafters. They're not decorations, more like offerings. Swatches of umbrella cloth, you realize. Stitched, torn, dyed, rain-stained, some still bearing the curve of a rib. A quiet gallery of once useful things. You lean back and watch them sway. One panel is deep red, with gold embroidery barely hanging on. Another is a dull green, dotted with burn holes. A third is simply gray, unremarkable, and yet it moves the most in the wind. You remember the children's spinning ribs, the lamp covers at the baths, the rib bundles tied with red string and sunk in the river. You remember the shrine at the crossroads, the umbrella handles nestled beside coins. You remember the silent collector and how his burden looked almost like a procession. You remember how many pieces of yourself you've left scattered through this city. Footprints, threads, drops of water, sighs. You look down at your umbrella again. It has been a shield, a nuisance, a burden, a companion. It has held, even in failure. And now, as the clouds pull apart and a weak shaft of morning light filters through, it rests. You reach into your satchel and pull out the spare rib Gaius gave you, still unused, still waiting. You place it gently on the bench beside you, not discarded, just left, in case someone else comes along with their own half-broken shade and no idea what to do next. The trees shift. A dove lands on the post above you, coos once, then leaves. You close your eyes. The breeze is gentle now. You feel your muscles soften, your breath lengthen. The rhythm of the city slows to match your own. You lie back, robe wrapped tight around you, the sounds of dripping branches and distant footsteps fading into a kind of hush, too complete to name. Your umbrella rests beside you, and you sleep, not under stars, not under stone, but beneath the ribs of cloth that have been carried, broken, mended, remembered, and now, quietly, still, wind down, final 300 words, and now the city grows quiet. The storm has passed, the gutters have emptied, and the last of the mist curls around corners like old cats returning home. Your umbrella, torn, repaired, trusted, rests folded by your side. It doesn't need to speak. It's told its story. You lie beneath the shelter of eaves, stitched with memories. in a city stitched the same way, from broken pieces, half-forgotten rituals, and the quiet dignity of things that refuse to be discarded. The wind is gentle now, no longer tests your ribs. It brushes against your cheek, cool and slow, like a hand smoothing back your hair as you drift. Somewhere, far off, a cartwheel turns, a pigeon stirs, a door creaks closed. But here, in this corner of Rome, where forgotten umbrellas hang like prayers and bent handles serve as blessings, everything holds still. You've walked with weight. You've carried what broke, and now you let it rest. Let your breath slow. Let your fingers uncurl. Let your thoughts settle into the softest folds of silence. There's nothing left to do. The ribs no longer creak. The shadows no longer crowd. The rain no longer falls. Only the rhythm of your breath and the hush of fabric swaying just above you remains. You are safe. You are dry. You are asleep.